So trading can be quite emotional, and there's a lot of emotions wrapped around the world of trading. And a lot of people will tell you, get rid of your emotions and have scapegoat mechanisms. Go to meditate, go to do this, go to the gym if you're feeling emotional. But the reality is we are not robots. Our goal is not to be away from our emotions. Rather, we are human, and every human is going to be dealing with their emotions. So our job as traders is to understand and recognize what emotions we will have and not be blindsided by them. Because the reality is if we are aware, if we can radically accept our emotions, we will be in a much stronger position to not only recognize them, but also deal with them better. And lastly, not have these cognitive limiting beliefs and cognitive biases that will be working against us. So in this video, I don't want to come on and talk about normal trading emotions, greed, fear, and all of these things you already know. Rather, I want to talk about very specific points that I've noticed in my journey trading now for 5+ years and having helped thousands of traders, hundreds become funded, and doing a lot of work with traders on a one-to-one basis. I think I found myself in a unique position where not only anecdotally in my own journey, but also helping many others, I've started to realize what kind of hurdles you should expect in your trading journey, and more importantly, how we can overcome them. So I have a few points prepared, and I might get a little bit deep on this one and maybe even get a little bit vulnerable and open up, because point number one is love in trading. Now, what does that mean? Everybody has childhood traumas, and up until 6 months ago, I was very naive to the fact that I also have my own childhood traumas. Having a childhood trauma does not necessarily mean you were an abandoned child and had a bad childhood. Quite the contrary. At times, positive experiences or things given to you from a place of love can also manifest into traumas in real life. So in my experience, my childhood was wonderful. I couldn't have a single complaint. My parents raised me very well with a lot of love and attention, and they always had me in mind when it came to my education, when it came to what I'm going to be when I grow up. They're always thinking about me first and always put themselves after me. And for that, I owe my parents everything. My mom was loving and supporting. The household was a great dynamic, and I always was given encouragement, and I was always given positivity around my success and achievements as I was growing up. So how could that be working against me? Well, the reality is we all have our traumas. And in my case, my reality was that in the end, on a subconscious level, to the point where I didn't even recognize it until I was told this is the case that can happen, I looked introspectively and realized this could be true. As a child, my parents would always reward me for achieving things. And that's a very normal thing. When I would go to school and I would get a good report card, I would get some pocket money, or I'd get a treat, or I'd get to go to McDonald's because I usually wasn't allowed junk food. So I was getting feedback, positive feedback from achievements. When I would go and do well in a football tournament or a hockey tournament, afterwards we would be rewarded. I'd be able to play with my friends that evening, or whatever it may be. I was always given love and attention and rewarded for my efforts and achievements. But the reality is later on in life, the cognitive beliefs that are ingrained on a subconscious level therefore become that my love became conditional. The love that I was receiving from my parents was becoming conditional, because if I achieved something, that's when I would receive love. If I got a good grade at school, I would be given a lot of reward and attention and love. That's a very positive, happy experience. But upon reflection now, that is building a cognitive bias. So when it comes to receiving love, we all have different ways of receiving love. You have to look into your childhood and see, how did I receive love, and what kind of cognitive biases has my childhood left me? And in my case, I believe that having a very supportive and positive household, which I would never change for the world, I owe my parents everything, and I'm blessed to be in that situation. And now it's just a case of me recognizing that the actions I take in my adulthood are also going to be in line with that belief system, which is I only receive love when I achieve something. And that can be quite a dangerous frame to have, because now if you are thinking as you are growing up, I have to become a funded trader, I have to become a profitable trader, I have to prove this to my parents, you're adding anchors in your life, because the reality is trading is hard and it is a journey in itself. It can take years to master the craft of trading. So already if we have these anchors of timelines and expectations and chip on our shoulder and wanting to show our parents how good we are, we're making our journey harder for ourselves, because now we are going to be going in and wanting to rush the process, desperate for success, just so we can show our parents and once again receive that love. It's a feedback loop that we all crave. And even though I didn't know this is what I was doing, I really wanted the validation and approval of my parents. But in hindsight, doing it all over again, I'd want you to be aware that what are your intentions coming in, and what are your traumas coming in, and what kind of anchors do you have in terms of having to prove something to someone? Or you may have your own childhood traumas and anchors that you should probably reflect on to see if that's adding a burden into your trading journey. So now later on, this is something I have learned retrospectively and come to know, and now I can start to deal with it. But another one that I've started to introspect upon a lot lot is when I started to face challenges in my life. And the reality is, when we are traders, we are all taught to be stoic. We are all taught to be strong with our emotions, strong-willed, especially as men. We are not really emotional beings, and with the society around us and the pressures we have, I was a person that was very away from my emotion. I don't really cry. I don't really open up. If I have some struggles in my life and it's just the frame I have as a man, I want to deal with it myself. I get my head down and I solve it because I want to take radical accountability for everything in my life. If something good happens in my life, I blame myself and I thank myself. But if anything bad happens in my life, I also blame myself and look what I could have done better. And maybe that's quite an unhealthy mindset to have, but that's how I've been carrying myself, and I don't really show emotion. If something's upset me, I'd rather work on myself. I'd rather solve it myself rather than have these awkward or tough conversations. But later on, when I came into trading, and I'm also bringing that stoicism into my trading career, when I take a loss, I be stoic about it. If I am feeling greed, if I'm feeling fearful, if I'm feeling fear of missing out, what do? I deal with my emotions as a typical man does, and I compartmentalize, I suppress, and I remove my emotions. Because if I can get rid of it, then I can act without emotion. I can act with logic. I can act with my strategy. I can act with the things I should be doing. And from a trader's perspective, that is correct. You know, we have a strategy, we have a playbook, we have the things we should be doing. And we know that from the beginning, from our strategy building process, or before we even start the day or the trading week, we know how we should be acting from a technical perspective, and also how we deal with losses or how we deal with our emotions. So for example, if I now have a losing streak or have a bad day in the markets and I go to the gym, what am I doing? I'm suppressing, I'm avoiding the emotion, and I'm releasing it in another way in the gym. And there's all these mechanisms that we all have. For example, taking a cold shower, for example, meditating. You know, meditation is kind of a practice where you're told, think of your thoughts as clouds passing in the sky. You see them, you notice them, and you allow them to pass by. Now, that is also a form of, it's an elephant in the room. You look at it, but you're not really dealing with the elephant in the room. You're not really dealing with your emotions head on. And then I came to find out, man, I'm a human. And if I keep suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, everyone always told me, you know, one day it's going to catch up with you. And I was very blasé about it. I was very naive to it, that no, it's not going to happen to me. I'm a strong-willed man. I don't have these emotions. I can deal with myself. And the reality is, it will have a ripple and domino effect. Maybe not today, but later on, maybe in my life. Now, what I realized is this has stemmed some issues in my personal life, where between the people I allow into my inner circle and people that I am at times vulnerable with, maybe my family, people I'm close to, I've realized that I become quite detached. I realized that I'm not the most vulnerable and open, and I don't always express my emotions. Or if somebody is now trying to reach out to me, I might close them off. And that's the reality, because I've become so strong and skilled at the art of suppressing and pushing away my emotion. When there is an emotional situation in my life, and with relationships, with family, with people around you, it is actually very healthy to talk about your emotions. It's very healthy to talk about things that are bothering you between business partners, between family members, whatever it may be. It's positive to have the tough conversations, because then you deal with it and move forward. Whereas in trading, it kind of works better if you suppress it. I found out this challenge in my life where the emotionality of trading has birthed problems in my personal life, because I've become a tough-skinned, stiff upper-lipped, stoic man, and that has not led me to be a great person around the people I am, because I am not vulnerable, I am not open. And the moment I recognize this, and people have told me this, I have now actively started to work upon this. So the first point I wanted to let you know is there are going to be situations and emotions in your trading career that come to you and you can deal with them. But there's also going to be other things from your childhood or from your present, emotions that might come up that blindside you, that you were not even aware of, or triggers and traumas you have from your childhood, which you don't even know why you're acting in a certain way, why you feel a certain way until you analyze your childhood, or why you carry yourself in a certain way as you become more and more profitable, as you become a better trader. Or even worse, if you're not even a profitable trader and you're bringing on this trauma, you're bringing on these losses, you're bringing on this despair and this hatred maybe towards the market or other people stems from trading, how is that going to manifest in your real life situations? And is that going to make you a better or worse person? This is a process I implore all of you to look into, as I have done in recent times. The next thing I want you to be aware of is the emotionality with prop firms. Now, prop firms are a wonderful thing, and I think it's the best route for a beginner trader that is looking to scale to become full-time. The best opportunity you have is prop firms, because you have very little downside, where you can buy a challenge for, let's say, $500. Worst case scenario, you lose $500. Whereas in the good old days, or the days when I started, I had to put in capital into the market, and all of that was up for loss. So with prop firms, you can leverage a $500 deposit into a $100,000 account, and you have the buying power in the markets of $100,000. So this is a wonderful situation and a beautiful way to grow, where you can start extracting profit from the market through prop firms to leverage and funnel into your own personal account and scale from there. And that's the route I think you should all be taking. But you also have to be aware of the disadvantages that this wonderful opportunity can also bring. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And the reality is, as I'm sure most of you know, prop firms are a closed loop. There's no execution in live markets. Reality is, the minority that are profitable and making take it to a payout, which is less than 1%, by the way. Those 1% of profitable traders in the prop firm space are paid out by the 99% of losers. And it gets worse because now it's easier to get into the prop firm space because they are adding emotionality in and they've lowered the barrier to entry. If you were a stock trader and you wanted to get into trading stocks with the leverage you have and the kind of brokers you have to have about $25,000 at a minimum to even play the game of stocks, to even trade in the stock market. When it comes to Forex, okay, now you can have $200 account, a $500 account, and you can get started. You can start trading micro lots and at least get the ball rolling. But when it comes to prop firms, you can literally get started with $50 and get a 1K or a 5K account. So the barrier to entry is so low. And because now there is a lot more hope pegged to the prop firms, they can give you more opportunity, and therefore that is a bigger dream to chase, and therefore more and more people get involved, because now people would usually in 1 year maybe blow 1 or 2 accounts and then they would be like, man, I've messed up. But when it comes to prop firm, I see people doing a challenge every week. I've seen people do a challenge every month. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody did in the space of a week about 100 funded accounts. That can be a very, very negative spiral if you're not careful. So you have to be aware, because there's new participants coming in. The barrier to entry is lower. The upside is higher. So there's now all these emotionalities around the prop firms. And because it's a zero-sum game, we know that minority of profitable traders are paid out from the majority of non-profitable traders. So you have to be careful to realize, am I feeding into this ecosystem? And if I am feeding into this, why am I feeding into this? Is it because I'm not a profitable trader? Okay, that is something in your control. That is your responsibility to at least determine profitability, find your own track record, and not blow your money on these funded accounts. Rather, go for the trials, go for the free demo accounts, build your track record, build your back testing, build your stress testing, and prove to yourself that you can justify spending on a prop firm challenge. Don't worry that it's just $200 and you can afford it, because the reality is, if you can afford it once, you'll justify to afford it twice, 3 times. The next thing you know, you've blown 20 challenges. And don't be surprised, thousands of people have done that. And don't be ignorant to the fact that you are immune to that. Anybody can get into this spiral of, you wake up one day and think, man, I've blown 50 funded accounts and I've spent more than if I deposited into a broker and traded that alone. And the reality is, just because you're not blowing the funded account, but you're not passing the challenge, that's you also spending money, because you could do 50 challenges and your net progress at the end of the 50 challenges accumulatively might be you are 5% up. But because you did not pass the 10% or 8% target of the challenge, you are not the profitable trader you needed to be. But your track record might show you are 5% up after 6 months. That is a profitable trader, just not profitable enough for the prop firms. So the emotionality that comes into it is a status-driven industry. Young men come into Forex, and it's usually young men. And how are they attracted into the industry? It's just like going to the gym. The reality is that most men get into the gym because they want to look good. It's for egotistical and external validation factors. You want to get girls, you want to be in shape, you want to be bigger, so you're getting more respect, you command more respect in a room. That's the reality of most people getting into the gym. They want to look better, they want to feel better, and therefore it is a status or validation driven endeavor. The same goes for trading. Usually young men get into trading because they see the lifestyle, they see other influencers doing well, they see the Lamborghini and the flashy lifestyle, and they compare it to their reality of, I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I can't earn and afford a Lamborghini. So what are they getting into trading for? They're getting into it to chase a lifestyle, to basically post on Instagram. Because the reality is, there is a million ways to make $1 million. And there is a million ways that you could make $1 million in a more secure way than trading. Because trading, you can actually apply yourself for 5 years and make no money. But if you apply yourself for 5 years in sales, I guarantee you'll make at least $10,000. I guarantee it. So now if you embark on the journey of trading and knowing how difficult it is, and knowing there is no guarantee, and knowing all the pitfalls along the way, why do we even enter? Yes, you can make money, but there's other ways to make money. Well, the reality is, we want to have this lifestyle. We want to be flexing on Instagram like the people that inspire us. We want to have the materialistic side of trading. The reality is, subconsciously or not, that's why most people get into it. Because when you first start off, there's no calling, there's no passion, there's no curiosity really behind it. It's actually quite a boring thing from an external perspective. So you might be dragged into it for the lifestyle and Instagram and social media and all these things, but the reality is, you end up staying for other reasons. You end up staying because you want to solve the puzzle of the market. You actually get passionate about backtesting and going on the charts every morning. You fall in love with the routine, you fall in love with the industry, and that's what happened to myself. But I want you to focus on the point where I said, why did we get in? If we got in for chasing validation, chasing materialism, chasing a certain lifestyle, the prop firms also know that, and they press the button of that emotion. And how do they do it? They know, young men, it is wired within us to be competitive. It is wired within us to be better than the other man. The reason we want a Lamborghini, let's say, is not because of how fast it goes and how fast the acceleration is and how big the engine is or whatever other statistics there are behind the car. The reason we want a Lamborghini is because we know that other men can't get it. And desire is pegged to the inability to get something. If everybody could have a Lamborghini, nobody would really want it, because then it is not really a status symbol. It's not really an achievement. We want things we can't get. And as men, status is pegged to things that are difficult to get. A good body is difficult to get. A Lamborghini is difficult to get. A nice house, a nice holiday, all these things that we chase, whatever it may be, it is difficult to get. And therefore, that's why it's worth having. And that's why as young men, we go through struggles to try and achieve these things. Now, the prop firms are pressing on that button. What they do is they now throw leaderboards in your face. They want to have this competitive sport side to it. They add in certificates so you can have this badge of honor that you can post on your social media to show you're making progress. They do all of these things. Why? Because they want you to feel emotional. They want you to feel the status. They want you to feel the emotion of the reason you got into the industry, which is external validation, which is proving to your parents, which is proving to Instagram, which is to escape the rat race, to chase the lifestyle. These are the reasons we got in. And on a subconscious level, maybe you are still craving that. And now the prop firms are pressing down on that emotion to do what? So that you chase validation, so that you chase extremes. Now it's suddenly not good enough to have a 5% quarter. You know, a 5% quarter on a big enough account is phenomenal returns. And actually, there was a Wall Street hedge fund that achieved 60% in a year. It was so outlandish, it was so unheard of that they immediately got investigated by the SEC. When you realize achieving a 5% return is not a small feat. That is the market standard. That is the S&P. That is the property market. 5% is a phenomenal return. But all of a sudden, because of prop firms, we want 10% in 1 month. All of a sudden, because of the leaderboards on FTMO, we need to get 20% to rank on there, and we have to prove it to ourselves or prove it to other people that we are a good trader. Now we are chasing extremes. That is not correct approach. And especially for a newcomer into the industry, especially as someone who is not well seasoned to understand the reality of the market, to understand the reality of the industry, all of a sudden you start chasing 10% as a bare minimum. All of a sudden 20% is the benchmark. Well, in reality is 20% in a month is a phenomenal, unheard of, unexpected return that the reality is not sustainable on a long-term horizon. Because if it was, Wall Street, who invest billions of dollars into AI, staff, technology, insider information, they would be achieving these returns too. So the next thing I want you to be aware of is these emotions that prop firms bring. For example, why is it that you need a 10-day minimum trading in a challenge? Why do you need 10 days? Because let's say you pass it on the first day. People do it. They maybe over leverage, or they catch a lucky trade, or their first trade just happens to be a banger. Why is it that you need to wait 10 days before you get the next phase? It's because usually people check out. They get the pass in the first day or two, and then they no longer pay attention to the market. They take a week off, they celebrate, they now think they're on top of the world, they have this positive emotional high, and they bring a sense of maybe overconfidence or arrogance to the next phase. So now combine it with you've checked out for the market for 10 days, so you've lost your sixth sense, you've lost your intuition, you've lost your flow and understanding of the intricacies of the market. Pegged with emotional high and overconfidence, what is going to happen when you enter phase two? No doubt you're going to be coming in with a different emotional set and less experience because you were out of touch. That's why so many people who pass phase one struggle to pass phase two. Now let's say you even do pass phase two. To get the funded account, they give you 5 days to wait. You have to sign a contract, they're waiting for the account to come by. The reality is these are all automated. These prop firms can give you the account details in seconds. Why did they make you wait 5 days? It's because once again, now you've passed phase one and phase two. You are now a funded trader. You can now show your parents that yes, I've done it. I am a funded trader. You can show it to your community. You can show it on Instagram. And what are you doing? You are boosting your self-confidence and you are giving yourself all this sense of achievement when you've actually not even take a penny in withdrawals. You've got this emotional high, and what happens? I've seen it time and time again. People pass phase one, they pass phase two, and then they blow the funded account within a week. They took their time on the funded challenge. They did it over 30 days. They were risking 0.2% and they were going in a very smart, intelligent way. And all of a sudden in the funded account, they lose all composure. They blow it within a week and they over leverage. They get into a losing streak. They spiral. All these emotions come in. That is the prop firm's objective. That's what they want you to do, to contribute to the pool of losing traders so that their profit margins as prop firms are wider, because they still have to pay out the minority, but the gap between paying out the withdrawals of the minority and the abundance of people that are losing is their profit margin. So don't be that person who is lining the pockets of these prop firm account owners. So on my piece of paper over here, I did have a lot of notes prepared and I had maybe 5 more points, but this video has got quite long, so maybe I'll do a part 2. But the last thing I want to leave you with is be honest with yourself. The reality is we can all get caught up in the world, in the materialistic side of things, in chasing success, in being in the trenches of work and studying and making progress. And that's all wonderful. But the hardest thing to do is be honest with yourself, especially if you have to have a difficult conversation with yourself, especially if you need to address your childhood traumas, why you behave in a certain way, why you act in a certain way, what kind of validation or goals are you chasing, and why do you even have these goals? These uncomfortable conversations you need to have with yourself, and you always need to be honest to yourself. The reality is no one is going to care about your journey more than yourself. It is the most important thing for you is your own journey. Take self-accountability, but with that self-accountability, bring radical honesty to yourself. Really question, if you've had a losing week, don't blame your mentor. Don't blame the troubles you had at work. Don't blame your situation. Don't blame that I'm not intelligent enough. Don't ever scapegoat. The best advice I can give you is always blame yourself. Whether something great happened in your life, it's your fault. Whether something terrible happened in your life and it seems like it was out of your control, it was your fault. No matter how weird it seems, always blame yourself, because that is the most liberating feeling you can have. When you realize that everything was your fault, it means everything is in your control. And the moment you realize everything is in your control, then you can start taking action and taking ownership of your journey. So if you no longer blame your mentor, if you no longer blame your strategy, if you no longer blame the externals, rather you blame yourself and say, I didn't pick the right mentor. I do not study enough. I do not backtest enough. I do not have enough experience in the market because I did not wake up every single day for 2 years and watch every single London Open on EU. If you haven't done that for the last 2 years, don't expect yourself to be profitable for no reason. You need to pay your rent. You need to pay your dues before you can judge yourself. So as long as you're putting your head down, you're doing the work you need to do, and you are bringing yourself with radical honesty and blaming yourself for anything that goes right or wrong in your life, that is a liberating feeling, and that is the strongest empowerment you can have in your journey, is that self-honesty and self-radical acceptance of everything around you. Never scapegoat, never blame others, rather take ownership of your journey. And I promise you, you do that for an extended period of time and trading is not as hard as people make it out to be.